Oh yeah, you can sit in the third row. Okay. This is literally just a technique to randomly associate you in a different group. So we are splitting up just like if you are friendly with each other, we all have one thing to be a little mixed up and not be friendly with each other. Like completely organic. Feel free to spread out if you need more room.
Yeah, so what will happen is, like this group, you may like have a couple behind you, so you can actually, but just, and then this group, you might end up like moving your chairs out so you can look at each other when you're working in a group.
That's all right, just pick a group.
I'm sorry, I love you. Everyone else, before I.
Or the hardest one is to like get into the group. We knew. We buffered 5 minutes for this. We knew it was going to be. All right, everybody, welcome. I'm Inga from Gonzaga.
Chrissy from Stetson. Spring from Vanderbilt.
And we're excited to welcome you to our workshop today. So a couple guiding principles. First of all, who's in the room? So who's been doing externships 0 to 2 years? Anyone? Okay, good, all right, nice, that's a good mix. 2 to 5? Beautiful. 5 to 10? And 10 and over. Wow, that's a good mix, and the groups are mixed. Yeah, perfect. That's why random is good, because you get what you get. All right, so today we're going to move things really quickly. So we're going to be doing mini workshops, and it's probably going to feel a little frenzied and a little chaotic. That's okay. We also believe that time pressure and moving things in kind of that concise way actually helps with creativity and curiosity. So we're excited about that. So just know that that's coming, all right? So we are also excited because we're going to try and tackle some big issues that don't have answers, that can feel a little bit overwhelming. And so we're talking about, we organized and ended up working together because we all had really big question topics to discuss. And so they kind of like said, well, hey, maybe you should think about joining together. And we did. And so, but we want to let you know right up front that we don't have any silver bullets or answers, and that these are frankly kind of can be overwhelming or frightening. So relax into that. Okay? Be comfortable with the fact that we don't have any answers. And also a few other guiding principles for us today. We, as an externship community, just like in our classrooms, believe in collaborative and indigenous learning, and that's what this session is going to be about. We have a few exercises that we've developed in these contexts, but most of the content is going to be generated by you, right, and your experience. This room has a diversity of ideas and values that you bring, and we're going to be capitalizing on that, and we're learning with you, and that's like we don't do hierarchical learning in externships, right? It's not out from here to there. It's a collaborative learning environment. So that's how we're going to run. That's how we run our classes, and that's how we're going to run the session. So just know that as a premise too. And again, it's super complex. We don't have answers, and so just know that. So we talk about process just like we do with our students. Our obligation, we think, is not to answer these questions, but our obligation is to help students see and understand in concrete and tangible ways the structural issues regarding their profession, regarding the profession that they're entering into. And these big issues tend to be discussed across law school, typically in platitudes, and even in the profession. We know that we have these big issues, but we don't really talk to and think about how we actually get into those and support students in those. And so we want to move sort of from those platitudes and generalities that are often discussed in the profession and other parts of the curriculum and even in the bar. And we think that our job as externship professionals is just to bring that to light, right? To bring students in and to give them the tools to have awareness that these issues do exist and to validate them, right? Because that's often students come to us and they're like, they've stumbled into something and people aren't validating that those feelings and emotions that they're having are real and that we have these big problems in our profession. And to learn to deconstruct those problems, to have awareness, to give them tools to deconstruct them, and then to create some kind of pathway or plan for dealing with the difficult realities, right? We don't like say they don't exist. We have to create plans for how they're going to get some kind of handle on it and get some kind of comfort level with the ambiguity, right? And that's our job. And so we're going to have an art project.
Let's grab that because we're in a really nice room. We're gonna like allow each group to paint while you're working through these issues to create both right and left brain. We asked Alex and Alex said, I don't want any complaints from my dean that there's paint in the room. So out of respect for him, but I still want you to feel artistic and creative in this process, in this space. And so hopefully this allowance of collaboration, I feel like the last group just primed us for this. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And one of the things, so just so you know, like what we were gonna do, and maybe in your classrooms you can do, is we had just mini canvases and some paintbrushes. And so what we're gonna do is ask you to move those around as you contribute to the group, okay? So that's a really simple way that you can, use, because right, we wanna encourage participation from everybody in your externship classes, and so that's a good way to make sure that everybody's contributing because everybody gets to physically sort of imprint on the canvas, and then in the end, what we're going to do is combine all the canvases and have one presentation.
There's also a very tactile way to show that collaboration is organic and it doesn't necessarily have a scripted chronology. And so everybody's paintbrush that dips and is put on the canvas creates this beautiful scheme, and then 4 canvases together create this dynamic picture. And so we would encourage you to use that exercise in your classroom because it does level the playing field and it really fosters that type of collaboration that you want to see and usually creates great energy.
Have all 3 of you done it?
No.
It was actually a great
just-
session from this.
No, it's great. It's a great idea. I just wondered.
We're gonna experientially have that experience.
Totally organic.
We don't wanna make any waves. So we are doing mini workshops, and we're just gonna move into them right now. So the reason you have cards is because you are in your groups that you will be consulting together to work us through these mini workshops. So really what these are is we have 3 big problems that we have no solutions to, and we're using these little relays. Sort of like
Externship.
Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, we're just gonna each identify a problem, or it's a very short problem identification for 2 minutes, and then we're gonna move you into your groups. We're gonna give you some parameters and discussion, and then you'll have 10 minutes as a group to brainstorm, come up with great ideas for us, and then we'll have a report out. And then we're gonna do that with 3 different problems. So again, it's gonna move really quick. So we're in problem identification number 1, and I have the first problem. So our overall general heading is how do we prepare students for the difficulties inherent in the profession? How do we equip them with tools to have meaningful and fulfilling careers and lives? So not just careers, but lives. It's a big issue, and I talked a lot about this. I'm not going to talk talk too much about it today because I talked a lot about it yesterday, sort of this inherent problem in the profession that we have with the need to reawaken who we are as a profession, right? And so I had a student say in class, well, I know it sounds cheesy, but I really came to law school because I wanted to do justice. And I was like, that sounds cheesy. That's a belief that the student had, and that was reinforced in law school, in what we were doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're in trouble, right? If the notion of justice has moved from something that I, hold up here to a statement or a sentiment that like, well, this is, that's too touchy-feely to actually believe in the concepts of justice. I was like, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. As a profession, we're in trouble. Like, how do we get ourselves like moved back into this camp where this is something that's exciting, that's fulfilling, and that's meaningful? And so, in light of the fact that we are, as a profession, I would say, in some ways potentially losing ground, that we're introducing new technologies like legal Zoom, outsourcing, those type of things, how do we get our students to feel relevant again? How do we get ourselves as a profession to feel relevant, especially when we're not serving the majority of the population that needs to be served? And Spring is going to talk a little bit about that in her problem identification. So, it's a really big question. You have 10 minutes to solve it. You do have 10 minutes to solve it in this context. And so what we'd like you to do is we're going to have you break into groups, and then this will be the format for all of our workshops going forward, for all of our mini workshops. You have 10 minutes, and what we're asking you to do is we'll give you 10 minutes. For the first minute, you're just going to brainstorm. You're just going to do your best to brainstorm individually on your own. That's why you have the worksheet. You're going to write just some thoughts and just some answers. Then you have 9 minutes. We'll have a timekeeper, we'll have a note taker, and we'll have a presenter. So I'm your presenter, and then timekeeper and note taker.
We ran out of worksheets, so we apologize for that. So we put the problem identification on the board, and so we're working.
Okay. And so you have the 1 minute. We'll prompt you at the end of that 1 minute, and then you have 9 minutes as a group to come to a consensus and to present your ideas to the group. So keep it moving in your groups. Try not to take too much time when you're describing what you've come up with. Yeah.
For this problem, difficulties inherent in the profession, are you suggesting with that the difficulty we should be responding to is, say, a loss of feeling of justice or responsibility in service?
It's kind of, I think you could take it in that direction, but I don't think you have to. You don't have to be restricted to that. But that is a problem I'm particularly struggling with. But I think it's broader than that. So it's free for all. Like I said, these are timely, they're time sensitive, designed to reduce time to maximize hopefully your curiosity around these issues and your creativity. So 10 minutes, 1 minute for individual brainstorm, 9 minutes to come up with a group consensus of your top 2 ideas. So in your group, what you'll be doing is you'll be talking about your issue, talking about your solutions for group activities that you can do in your externships with your students or in student meetings. And then your group will come up with a consensus and take your top 2 ideas, and then we'll have a report out period. But there's a trick here. Your report out period is 1 minute. So in the group, you also have to figure out how to concisely report back to everybody, because you have 1 minute to report 2 ideas. So there's going to be a lot of time pressure on you. Okay, yes, there's some extras. Beautiful. All right. Okay, well, move into your groups. We'll set the timer for 1 minute, and then you have 1 minute to brainstorm.
Move around.
Anybody need a worksheet?
Yeah, it would be easier to just come up with it.
Yeah,
Ready, the 1 minute is up.
That's fast. That's fast. Really fast. All right, now you have 9 minutes as a group. Solve our problem.
Right, exactly, yeah. There's lots of different things.
Remember that originally our theory was to move the brush around, so don't forget to move your imaginary brush around.
So for me, I was reading the second question, and so one of my ideas was to interview lawyers at their placement about their career path, so one that they understand that there is a trajectory of their job. So my last job was have the favorite parts of their job, the least favorite parts of their job, and then work-life balance. So they started to get models. I'll pass the talking.
I identified the idea that I think students have difficulty prioritizing. In some cases, it's because I think they're pulled in too many directions, but I also don't think a lot of our students have the skills and capabilities to actually prioritize effectively unless they find themselves or they put themselves in a situation where they're the last too many different and so I thought start with any sort of time frame scale, weekly, monthly, and identify 3 goals and then work backwards and plan out how to achieve those goals on a weekly basis, semester basis, so that you're identifying your priorities, or by identifying your priorities, you're theoretically increasing your happiness or your effectiveness in the specific area you may narrow down, and then that will allow you to identify free time to explore initiatives. That would be a very concerning person.
Understanding of the broader landscape of agencies and government agencies, all works.
And various things I have not seen because they
It's the largest scale.
but one of the things is that I love seminars, and I've decided to make the role seminar. I haven't included, so I'd already done professional identity, a deep interview on this. And so I was thinking I could actually answer all 3 of these questions as I looked at them. We're supposed to, it's like there's something about, so very much like it's in the preamble. So the preamble is written and use that. So a couple weeks from now, I'm trying to find the. They're going to end, but they're it's like how do you yeah. Not that it's cheesy, not that it's some of the articles that we read is lawyers, maybe they're thinking of a phone, but they're not really thinking. So I don't know whether it's still like expanding their research. Yes.
Big word, choose the idea of big words. Mine is giving them credit. So it seems to be, you're going to be growing. We go back, you know, the worldwide access to justice. Hear that. I think it's important that I do classes on values or not only learning how they respond to one and what works and what doesn't, and talking about that. Then I would say it's medical an idea of together doesn't really
Don't forget to move your paintbrushes.
That's part of what I learned. They have to think about what their values are, what causes them stress, and give them a figure out strategies.
Identify values.
He's Darwin now, and he's,
But is he faculty, is he?
I'm relatively new.
Okay, so here's your 2-minute warning. You have 2 minutes left, and you're going to need to identify the 2 most effective ideas that you've come up with that you're going to report back to the group.
So really common things are stress and values, right? An idea.
And write a journal about where they are now, their process as a lawsuit, and thinking back about why they were originally their path has been consistent. Do they want to explore that? Do they want to remind themselves why? Anyway, and I don't know, a lot of I think the only ones that I have a lot of I love radio learning. I feel like that part of that. I know people write in their journals
And then sadly, they may have actually thought of that, but you're right.
Or identify values, write out.
Why not? Well, I just said here, so what I have to write out is a chart.
So this idea of what am I going to do? I've heard about personal mission statements. My way to
And then, you know, mature exercise for value. Does that sound like it? Yeah. What about stress?
Building the knowledge base to create an agency. I think that we need a lot of stress. Like you said,
You have 10 seconds. 2 ideas. All right, time's up. Everybody turn, face the front of the room. Each group is going to have 1 minute. We're going to strictly hold you to 1 minute to present your 2 ideas. So we're going to start here with, where's hearts? Hearts. 1 minute. Presentation.
All right, who are our hearts?
Hearts.
We are.
All right.
Are we ready?
1 minute.
Just blast us.
3, go.
Blast us.
It's okay if we have 3?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so, we
Take ask students to take their law school application, personal statement, and write a reflective journal about where they are now, what their current personal mission statement is. I mean, role of the lawyer as public citizen, as one of the exercises. Read the preamble and use it. How, interview your placement supervisor and write a reflective journal about how they're fulfilling their role as public citizens. And then self-care, bringing in other professions to talk about self-care, vicarious trauma, etc.
So legal professionals or?
No, just like social workers and, yeah.
The thing, done. How many seconds do we have left? 4.
Oh.
Done. Check it off. Beautiful job. Everybody give a round of applause. Nice job. Excellent ideas from that group. Thank you. I'm going to use all of them. All right, clubs. Clubs.
Oh, no, I thought you were taking.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So we identified 2 overarching issues that were common among us, and those were building your own sense of values of who you are and dealing with stress. And in terms of values, really working in class and in journals, mostly writing and speaking about self-awareness, about identifying your own values, that law school measures you in terms of grades and hierarchy, but is that how you want to go through your life measuring yourself? So specific, so awareness, reflection, anything else am I missing? I don't think so. And then for stress, charting your own stress, what makes you stressors, what are your stressors, how are you dealing with it, what works, what doesn't, what level are you at in your stress, and also interviewing others maybe in your workplace about stress, what their techniques have been throughout their career of dealing with their own stress. Oh, and I forgot in the values one, an assignment where you write your own obituary and you think about what you want to be remembered for.
Yeah. They've also said an end of life or a retirement party. That one's too dark. Beautiful job. I love. There's so many ideas there. You got like 5. That's excellent. Good job. Round of applause. Louder round of applause. Thank you. All right. Babe.
Okay. So one overarching issue is just getting students to be realistic about the challenges. They might say they want to be a public defender, but do you really understand what that's going to take? And so to be realistic about that, and then a more concrete level, I use the Creative Lawyer, which is a book with a lot of exercises in it that help you along the lines of identifying your values. There's a sort of Myers-Briggsy kind of part of it, and it has a lot of exercises. It's short on the platitudes and the anecdotes and long on the exercises to get you to reflect. Also bringing in a JD turned cognitive behavioral therapist to actually teach self-stress management tools and self-identification tools so that they can understand when they're having issues and how to take care of themselves and get the resources that they need once they're outside of the law school where they don't have all those resources pushed at them, which is an issue some of our students have struggled with.
Fantastic.
I have a height issue. Can you notate?
Yeah. And we'll get the information of the Creative Lawyer from you, and we'll be taking all of this information, compiling it, and sending it back out to you so that we can have all these ideas. And what's diamonds? Diamonds! That's what I forgot.
One thing we came up with was putting together an individual strategic plan, almost like an IEP or an individual improvement plan, but it's a living document. It'll help bring in sort of the career fulfillment, identifying values and things that they want to be and do, but also giving them a chance, and by introducing this document, giving them sort of a bigger picture with maybe the readings, reflections, client impact statements on the role of justice as they're thinking about where the individual strategic plan might go, and also thinking about knowing that there's going to be challenges, setbacks, and stressors and things, and how creating a toolbox as a group in the class with how you're going to deal with that. Coming up with plans for what if I'm not at the right job at some point in my career, who am I going to have a meeting with?
how do I have that conversation and frame it? Using our communication skills, identifying those communication skills, and the self-care needed at that point early.
Y'all are brilliant. Give yourselves a round of applause. I cannot believe that you separated in 15 minutes. This is amazing. All right, we're taking a picture, and then we're going to problem identify number 2.
Well, do you want to do examples?
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
forgot.
I'll take pictures.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have 2 minutes to present to you mine. So, I'll start it over here. So there's 2 pieces of paper coming around. So one of the things that I learned when I went to Jamaica and feel like I fell on my face was the importance and the power of story and storytelling. And learning how we identify ourselves in our stories and how we can make ourselves heroes even when we fall down and make mistakes, right? Because there's a learning arc. And so I have been working with my students really, really hard on storytelling. What is the story of your externship? Why? Where did you come from? Why are you here? Where are you going? And so I found this wonderful book. It's called The Making Meaning, or something about that. I don't know. And it's on there. But Emily Esfahani Smith wrote the book, but she wrote this article, which is just condensed into a 2-page article on the 2 stories we tell about ourselves. And it's a containment narrative and it's a redemptive narrative. So I have students identify a challenge before I tell them anything. I just ask them to write a challenge that they have. Once they write the challenge, that's the worksheet that we have. Once they write the challenge, I then ask them, I give them the story, they read the story to themselves, and then they learn about containment narratives and redemptive narratives. Then what I ask the students to do is take time to rewrite the challenge that they identified originally. Write it as a containment narrative and write it as a redemptive narrative. And then we sit together in a group and we talk about it. And it's amazing what they come up with. Partially because the containment narrative is so powerful, because people often jump to, I'm gonna lose my job, I'm gonna die alone, and which also brings up like the human needs, right? Like everybody comes down to like, I'm gonna die all by myself, alone in a cardboard box. And like, everybody's like, yes! And then you identify like a real human need, and like, we start talking about like emotions and feelings, and it's been such a good tool. I've used it twice.
All right, so I'm up for workshop number 2. This is something that I'm going to get a little bit serious about and maybe a little bit preachy. I believe that our institutions are designed as platforms for reform. We are in leadership positions to actually create space in our classrooms to discuss reform. I believe that our society is completely polarized right now, and that means our students have to come in and understand the work that needs to be done. And we need to not be hesitant about maybe a lack of training or understanding some of these issues, but to roll up our sleeves and create the space that is already a part of our programs or curriculum. So that means students need to not come in and enter thinking that this is just an extension of undergrad and they can haphazardly just sit back. They need to actually feel the weight of the very heavy issues that are pressing upon our nation. I think our democracy and the tenets of our democracy are in jeopardy right now, and there are some very big issues. And so I think students need to come together. I don't know if you've seen Oprah's America's Hope Circle group that has been happening, but this is purposely placing people who are on different sides and really dialoguing through it. And so we all know we have problems in our country, and so now it's your space to solve it. How can yeah, so I'll frame it like this. There's a million ways that you can frame this, right? So I want you to really put your thinking caps on. How can you, and do you have the power to create a space in your classroom to allow for those difficult conversations, to create a depolarization and to allow that dialogue to flow, and on what issue? I mean, there's a billion, right?
So,
Oh, you have 1 minute to do your, yeah.
And yeah, 1 minute for quiet time.
Are we doing this explicitly? Are we doing this explicitly? Provide reading, whatever, difficult conversations or something else, to give them a tool, an explicit tool. Wouldn't be the only one, but it's a tool that's going to have. The other thing would be, well, so that citizen thing is a really good tool here. And I'm just thinking I didn't get to write it down. But I was just thinking, okay, so in my general externship class, what I do explicitly is after we talk about what we're thinking of more digital digitalization, but I could say in-house coordinators, what's their role in explicitly if I say after I think maybe one idea would be to have students consider this situation, they make we explore that like next round civil discourse. So what are the judges, so like judicial schools to focus on what do we can say, how do they can really do it the way they're placed and really go deeper into of this particular.
So one exercise was my judicial exercise last spring was judges being biased and all how that's based on where it's formed. And so I wrote the quiz for 3. We're going to discussion about these, but I want them to be fact-based and based on your own experience, your cases, and what you've seen. So then we were and I said, we're not doing politics, we're not about discussion about have you seen evidence of politics or changes? What does that mean? As far as the justice system, and most of them actually had it. So the good news is they were able to write down here when political statements versus their experience in identify
I also want to debate the idea of, I like the idea of topics that students pick and choose from and then force them to then track through the topic. So they hit one topic one week and then third the next week. And then I want the feedback and the critique on the debates to be student-led and to build on the idea of the polar opposite. I want students to critique their preferred viewpoint and offer encouragement and feedback on the polar opposite to say, you know, this is an avenue where I would not explore. I think it's encouraging that build on that, create and then each student can provide feedback on how they proceed as well, so they get comfortable with the idea of not only critiquing content, but delivery process, and also meaningful, creative, collaborative, and
So, prior to the season, I was just interested in positions, particularly law students. So law students also take the laws for I don't think it's fair. But I think that's the common ground is that there are movements where people believe conservative justice applies just to with that. We also talk about biases
together and
together.
bring together
On negative words, they're going to accept just to all kinds of different
acting out.
Packers fan, getting out of that really heavy stuff. We have become more comfortable as a world.
Sometimes I like things that I'll have a good heart.
That's what
You know, if you got used to the idea of getting used to being in a transition, giving it a distance and having that face on something, a real person, with an idea to complex of a semester. We are asking them to identify something that is personal to them.
All right, we are now at 2 minutes, which means you want to collectively figure out what ideas you're going to report back.
Evolving, just the way you said, starting with something simple. Moving on to something more core to what they're gonna do.
So the classes that you teach your people from all kinds of interests and what they want to do. There's no rivalry in the class. And that has been a really yeah, I think something we were trying to do even in organization, trying to set the table so that you look out.
Does that give us any tangible? Because I think that may be too much exposure for students, but it may foster a dialogue if there's an effective way to do that. Because I know on my campus, it is almost impossible to have it. Even with several faculty, which I can imagine is very limiting for students. Regardless of, just being able to present the view, I think is an incredible Makes sense to write student discussion. And that may not
the other
But
it may give the student a platform.
All right, everybody collectively. First of all, I want to thank you for your time and your brain, your collective brain. And now we are ready for the report back. So this is always a hard moment to get everybody pulled back together in this space. All right, so who wants to go first? And we are collectively going to, yes. All right, Diamond, where are you?
Whoa.
Here we go. You have 1 minute. Go. Diamond.
God. We talked about empathy being sort of our overarching thing, so that we were really focusing on, in particular, the tools with simulations, having those types of discussions in separate areas. Oh. Okay. But I mean, we really want to focus on getting people, actually one of the suggestions was to get people from the community to come in and enact that, that simulation and work through, like, how do you look at body language? How do you look at eye contact? How do you look at tone, volume, etc., and how that can help with your empathetic viewpoint of it. Then we also wanted to take it from the to the other side as well, that you now have to try and empathize with your opponent.
Beautiful. Good job.
Hearts.
Round of applause.
Hearts here.
Good job. Thank you.
Where are my hearts? Hearts.
Hearts.
Go.
Okay, you ready? All right, so we also looked for a toolbox approach. Our approach was to teach students to handle uncomfortable positions respectfully. And so the tools that we would recommend are First, we would, with our class discussions, we would model respectful conduct, but we would also recommend articles that we could give them to be armed with how to handle difficult situations. There's one by John Landy, How to Work Effectively with Counsel Opposite, that Kelly recommended. I'll probably say his name wrong. We would recommend rules to govern any discussions so that they knew on the outset what we expected them to do. Start with less difficult conversations and move to the more difficult ones. And then maybe even assign individuals to different roles that aren't consistent with their beliefs, so that they learn how to argue on behalf of a client who they might not necessarily agree with. But that also takes out the personal side of it, and you learn how to be an advocate and be respectful without somebody attacking you for personal beliefs. Oh, do I have more time?
2 seconds. Sorry.
Clubs.
Wait,
Well done.
wait, round of applause.
Yeah, well done.
All right.
Clubs, where are you?
So we want to foster an environment where students are forced to engage in debate, dialogue over complex issues, say a series of 3 issues over a series of 3 weeks, one of which they have to take the polar opposite view of what their belief truly is. And then the feedback is student-led and student-focused, not only on content, but also on performance and engagement. And then incorporated in that is the idea of potentially monitoring through video, individual reactions to the dialogue that takes place, so that students can see kind of some of their inherent biases in the dialogue that goes along. And then the last portion of that is to have students confess their positions either at the start or at the end, to allow themselves to have some agency over their beliefs.
Fantastic.
Great.
Beautiful. Good job. Thank you.
Who's next? Club space.
Hold on. Me again?
You want me to? Okay. So we talked about maybe bringing in a mediator or a lobbyist actually to discuss both how to respectfully listen and try to persuade and identify techniques that you can use when you're talking to somebody who does not agree with you. The lobbyist in particular would be able to say, just because they don't agree with your why, your reasons behind it, doesn't mean that you can't get to the same place with a person, right? And teach you how to do it civilly. And then we also thought that having discussions around a couple of topics that are safer, like poverty, and discussing what are the root causes of poverty. Are the people who are in poverty, is it their fault? And those are safer topics, as well as life balance as it relates to women. And that's a way that people can be respectful without talking about the president or something like that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So a huge thanks, because our brains cannot get to this place without you. So the collective brain has definitely come together. I share with you some examples that I have done, and one I haven't done yet, but we're about to do it. We are pulling all of the clinics together in one space, and we are pulling in the Bar Association, who is working on wellness. So that gives us a foundation. And then we're workshopping it. So we're gonna do a day in the life. So as we go around, and I'm just gonna tell you, the prosecutor's office is like, I don't believe in it. And so it's great because my local government clinician does believe in it. And so the students are gonna hear that, and there's gonna be a cross-pollination. And then it's endorsed by the Florida Bar, who's doing such a great job right now. I'm so proud of them. And our local bar is doing a great job. I don't think if I put this together by myself, I would be in a safe space, just to be quite honest with you. So I'm glad that we're doing that, pulling it all together. This other one that I've done, and this was in New Orleans when I was at Loyola, the Confederate monuments were coming down, and Bill Quigley was the person who was taking them down. And there was a lot of, and we're sitting in UGA in the South, right? So I'm going to say this, right? There's a lot of tension on this issue. And I felt that it was a needed and necessary space to pull the pleadings and to literally analyze them and then talk about them in our externship class. And so we did it, and we pulled the litigation, and we talked about it. And that was very scary for me. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was terrified because I wasn't sure what was gonna come out of it. But I think everybody came out with a refreshing tone of thank you for letting us have this space. And that's part of it. right? So pulling the hard topics of gun rights and gun control, freedom of speech versus hate speech, equality, justice, race, like let's get there, let's roll up our sleeves. That to me is the externship pedagogy of the future, or now, because I know many of you are doing it, and so I actually need you materials.
Quick question to be raised. And some of us in our group are at, I mean, and actually this isn't me, but at some of the schools are more conservative where the students are not in that place. And that's why we sort of raised the sort of safe topics to start having those conversations without going so far that it ends up being actually more polarizing. So, I mean, how do you deal with a student body that is coming from a conservative background and not?
I don't think we should make assumptions, that's the first thing. Even though that your whole student body may essentially be or appear to be conservative, I think that there are students that are in that audience and their safe space many times is online, right? And so maybe starting with an online discussion first anonymously, Twin does this and allows this for you, and then pulling it in to actually structure it. I'd love to hear how Alex would do this because he's so methodical in the rounds. But I think that's part of it. I actually don't think we should make the assumption that our body is like this. Our country is so divided right now, but yet people are exploring ideologies. And that exploration to me is very exciting.
I think to build on that, if you feel that you have a student body that really needs some slow level introduction into the idea, if you start with a very simple or calm topic, my background is in personal injury, right? And so if you have the students review and use a mediator to present a plaintiff and a defendant over a slip and fall, that's something that may happen every day, that doesn't, other than the individuals affected, isn't going to impassion a lot of people. But if you develop outcomes from that and then the following week do the same exercise with a topic of maybe considerable tension and just reintroduce those same outcomes as, here's how we can frame this dialogue from either side.
Here's the other part, don't frame it as conservative and liberal.
Right.
That's the key, right? It's like where there are multifaceted ideologies and like how do we pull those in? I think it's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
You literally grabbed a lot of
Very good. Okay, moving on to our last problem. So an issue I've been sort of thinking a lot about and trying to address in my externship courses is one that we don't tend to sort of tackle head on or explicitly in law school, but that shapes the career choices of our students and also the quality of justice in our country. And so it's the issue of how legal services, not necessarily just civil legal aid, I'm referring to the services performed by lawyers writ large, are organized and distributed and funded. So in the public sector and the private sector, who pays for lawyers' services, and what implications do the answers to that question have for the kinds of career options available to our students and the quality of justice in our legal system. So we have students who want to do public interest work and they recognize that the jobs in that sector are more scarce and less compensated than the ones in the private sector. And I think we have an obligation to help them start thinking more deeply and critically about how that work is funded and organized, how our budgets for public defenders' offices determine, who sets rates for appointed counsel in indigent defense cases. And on the civil side, what kinds of non-LSC funding are available to civil programs, what kinds of sources of funding are available to nonprofit advocacy agencies. And students who want to work in the private sector but believe in equal justice principles and have a sort of sense of public concern about the quality of our justice systems, want to incorporate service work into their careers somehow. What are the considerations that they should be thinking through as they think about their career paths? This means practice, a viable path, representing plaintiffs and fee-generating claims. So the question that I want to toss out to all of you is, what can we do, in an externship setting to help students start to, identify and grapple with these issues and to kind of look beyond the landscape of legal jobs and institutions as they currently exist, to think about why they have the particular shape and distribution that they do and what it means for their careers and sort of the promise of equal justice more broadly. So that's the question.
Small potatoes.
Yeah. Just a little thing to think about. Yeah, go.
1 minute. All right, grab your paintbrushes.
Oh, that's what it is now. That's the boss.
But I just had no idea, don't do. And I just go around. Yeah, no, go ahead. Not to be right. Satisfaction, service, and that made it easier to read, so I read. Careers. However, none of thoughts, okay, here, all right, and I went way too many. I thought,
You can talk about, give them more knowledge about some and how they
I always have some entity and some
and also I guess I'm looking at this like something like
that come from these places and say, your job is to come up with a proposal. I can't do it. It's like a combination of readings and
how do you reinforce it? You gotta
go
go
interview with people from different sources and still want to
I'm interested in that.
here are some ways, insights combination of personal how to ways to create understanding he said, well, I thought about we're going to team up and I'm going to make a lot of money. Not that I have anything to do with it, but it's like, you're the people waiting for all the people.
The value calculations with their chiefs and exploring avenues, whether it's in public service or to go into large firms. Because when you're supervising hours, we focus on integrity. Why do we think about why do we have to as well to assist others? And then I also thought of another way, if there's a situation getting students to start getting funding issues for the grade that we had to write. Basically said to do this by and so if you're funding that, thinking about the really difficult issues that you have to solve. One of the first part, how much you can raise, can you take a stand on that, destroy it, and do
So, like, one of the things that we have one of our questions on how our students reflection on how to tackle this job, no matter where they are, they have that I've already spoken to them.
I'm gonna go and make a ton of money on finding you. Exactly. So I do that specifically in there. I always ask that question.
I think a lot about this, I do a lot about this. I agree that educating is just static. People are entitled to 3 layers of self-facing mistakes. I combine that with, how hard it is going through 3 years of law school. And when you start talking about how hard it is for people to be about keeping your children getting there. That's what that educational piece, and one of the things I do is assign them is find an article about the access justice gap and the solution. And so then they can go where they want to around the student who says, choose only one I didn't know that would be for you. One gets to one finds pro bono and really understands some formation, finding their own way in, and then teaching each other how they have to bring them to class and teach each other about what it is.
I didn't have anything, but I really like your idea of diversity team, and it's like almost I think maybe something that we're trying to get.
Your game rushes.
The individual strategy almost or maybe make it a streamlined version. Identify the values, why you think what you figured out, what is the value point and then answer the questions.
But I just, all right, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, we have.
Let's decide.
Benefits.
I think there's a lot of combination of bringing people in as well as having our students research. So a combination of that.
I kind of just put that.
Other alternative paths.
Exercise. That's a certain amount of money, and then they start
Simulation.
give them a little bit of the grounding, they have to do anything. Do you send it to the process or school first project, or do you not? It's really good. Then we agree with students, that's what they say. For some of them,
Which could be part satisfaction, but keeping your own lights on, right? And not your long.
All right, we're super excited.
Okay, let's start with Diamonds.
All right, we're going. Observation assignment, where the students will report back their view of pro se litigants, and a discussion can develop from that. Problem solving workshop round, just a hijack of everything that we're doing here, placed in the classroom for students to solve problems about inequity. A review of the self-representation reporting, within the docket, and having students understand about that and discussion on that. Side-by-side pro bono work and a day of service. Interviewing directors of agencies about funding, and reporting that back as well to the rest of the class. And storytelling to engage students about those who are in the community and what their issues are.
I can't believe you put that in Beautiful job. Wow. We can solve the problem. Let's take on a world problem next.
We are.
So we discussed like a class in sort of the history of public interest lawyering, access to justice, making sure that the class has some real context to have a discussion that's informed, not just sort of out of nowhere. So also like a pro bono panel, especially for those who aren't doing sort of public interest externships, so showing that it's a part of everyone's career, no matter whether you're doing corporate counsel or government. So putting panels together. Another idea we had was, doing classes on like student loan issues, repayment, ways that you can make a public interest career work for you, as well as.
We have a practicum, it's called Pro Bono in Practice, and it assumes that the students are probably going to be in a law firm and teaches them how to select pro bono cases, how to pitch it to their firms as valuable, and then teaches them the skills that they need to do the kinds of pro bono projects that they would likely be doing in a law firm, and so they actually end up representing somebody in a TPO, temporary protective order setting, and they learn interviewing skills and that sort of thing.
So that's a practicum, because they have a field placement component and that?
So they work with one of our outside organizations on one of those cases. So it's not technically an externship because they're not placed there the whole semester, but they do partner with one of our outside organizations to do the live client case.
Beautiful. Round of applause. Thank you so much.
Moving over here to this group.
What are you?
The youth,
Club.
Well, we talked a little bit about getting more information to folks about the access to justice staff and about the numbers and the stats and kind of groups, and then the idea of this kind of poverty type of simulation where you take a couple with a child and you have one of them pick up like the undocumented husband pick up a drug charge or something. Then you see the cascade of kind of agencies that surround this family and then what kind of happens. And in the process, you can highlight all the different places where legal services is present, all the places where lawyers would be needed, and kind of where they're not.
Excellent.
And then the Diamonds.
Arts.
All right, so we talked about doing this in a very practical way and approaching this practically. So I have a class, I bring people in from different practice areas, different professional settings. So I'll bring someone from private practice, someone from the government, and someone from a nonprofit, for example, and ask how do you keep the lights on. And that discussion is very different for each of them. We talked about then expanding on that, creating projects where they're researching different ways to fund what you're doing, even potential different career paths, and so something in a foundation or something like that, pro bono coordinator firm, things like that. We wanted to kind of weave together the ideas of service, satisfaction, and success, and see how does that play in. I would add salary to that, but I'm curious.
That's what success is.
Oh, okay.
Person.
But then we talk about even things like, can you do crowdfunding? Can you partner with someone even in law school? Hey, you're going into the corporate sector. I want to do nonprofit. Let's start this relationship now. One more thing that this is listening to Deepinder there and telling about what they're doing. Our dean started a book club, and we just read the book Eviction, and we had the staff, faculty, students, everybody talk about all these issues. We created a safe space on some levels because we all read the book, but that's been a really cool thing. It's our second year doing it, so.
Super cool. Round of applause.
Yes, super quick, because I don't really have, I'm very new to this. I don't have much to add. I'm going to take all these ideas back. The one exercise that I've been doing as I've tried to figure out a way to address these issues is something that I discovered in preparing this, that Inga and others have been doing as well, sort of an audit, having students audit their organizations, figure out where the funding comes from, what the restrictions are, and then having them present to the rest of the class on the findings of that audit and what it means for who gets turned away. So for example, in Nashville, our local legal aid has recently just totally shut down its housing intake line. There's zero capacity to take on any housing cases at all. And so the student who presented on that talked about how the LSC budget cuts kind of trickled down and led to nobody getting served on that front.
All right. Okay, before we leave, because we have 2 minutes, I do this in the classroom. It's our reflective time. This space has been sacred, and hopefully you have felt that. And so we're going to take 2 minutes to literally popcorn style, to using it. What have you learned? One reflection and one rapid fire. Just put hands up. One thing that you've learned just from this session.
Time is our fourth teacher, quote unquote, Chrissy.
Time is our fourth, literally, presenter. We learned so much from this. One thing, one takeaway. I know it's uncomfortable and it takes a little while to get involved. Think creatively.
Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Keep going.
Brainstorming.
Brainstorming.
Break people into small groups and make them talk.
We realized the paintbrushes were actually a visual for us to make sure that we could see rather than us interfering with it. What else?
You give people an impossible task and they rise to it.
Through collaboration.
More?
Time pressures pull out introverts. Facilitate their integration into conversation.
Yes.
Invite you. More?
For us, from a, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Learning to be fun.
Learning
Can be fun.
Even on difficult topics.
Right.
Letting go, for us, letting go of some of the control, having that flexibility, and just how much we got from this, debriefing what was going on as it was happening.
This was very much an organic process for us, just to be quite honest with you. We had several phone calls, and then we started brainstorming this session, and we weren't quite sure how the hell it was going to go. But it is just great to work with you. I thank you very much, very much.
And we'll post all of this online on the conference website. There were so many. So I'm bringing our report from the organizing committee to move it along over to the place we have a very important visitor. Not that we aren't all very important, but we have limited time with Bill Adams from the ADA, and so please make it over to lunch in the town hall as soon as you can. I don't know.
Well, it's out to the right.
Yes.